This podcast was produced using artificial intelligence and refined by human editors. Hey listeners, grab your virtual passports because today's episode of Travel with Lara and Luca is taking you to the heart of Europe's cool capital, Berlin.
That's right, Lara. We're diving into the city of currywurst, where history collides with hipster culture, and every cobblestone has a story to tell.
Berlin is not just a dot on the map, Luca. It's a vibe, an attitude, a haven for artists and history buffs alike. It's where edgy meets traditional, and trust me, there's nowhere else like it.
I couldn't agree more. You know, every time I think of Berlin, I remember that first walk I took around Alexanderplatz, the people, the energy. It was nothing short of electric.
Oh, the stories those streets could tell. And speaking of stories, we've got a trove of them lined up for today's show. We'll be your guide to the iconic sights in our next segment, but first, let's share a bit about why this city tugs at our heartstrings.
For starters, Berlin is this amazing puzzle. The pieces are all its diverse, colorful neighborhoods, each with its own character and charm.
True, Luca. From the bohemian vibes of Kreuzberg to the elegance of Charlottenburg, Berlin dances to its own rhythm, and we've had the pleasure of dancing along.
And let's not forget the infamous Berliner Schnauze, that famously brusque yet charming Berliner attitude. It had us both taken aback initially, but now it's part of the charm, isn't it?
Absolutely. In Berlin, bluntness is wrapped in a warm-heartedness that's as palpable as it is paradoxical. And fear not, dear travelers, the Berliners do have a sense of humor.
Oh, they do, and will inevitably let ours shine today as well. After all, what would our podcast be without a little laughter and the odd poetic musing, right?
Indeed. So before we venture into the maze of Berlin's iconic sights, a quick reminder that we've got Berlin's delicious cuisine on the menu for our second segment. But Luca, why does Berlin hold such a special place for us?
Well, for me, it's the sheer resilience of the city. It's been through upheavals that have shaped not just Germany, but the entire world. And yet, here it stands, bold and beautiful.
Resilience. That's the word. When I first visited the Berlin Wall, I felt the weight of history there. But now, with its vibrant graffiti, it's like a canvas of hope, reinvention, and it's such a powerful symbol of Berlin's rebirth.
And speaking of rebirth, Berlin today is a bubbling pot of innovation, art, and progressive thought. It's like the city took its troubled past and molded it into something utterly avant-garde.
That innovative spirit is exactly what we're exploring today. From the iconic sights that echo with the sounds of history, to the hidden corners where today's creatives leave their mark.
Yes, and not to forget those quirky Berliner moments we're bound to share. Like when you tried to order a coffee in German, Lara, and ended up...
Luca, save it for the weird facts segment? Although, I might just get back at you with that story about you in the U-Bahn.
Ha! All in good fun. Our listeners will definitely get their fill of laughter, along with a hearty serving of Berlin's extraordinary history.
That's our show in a nutshell. Chatty, digressive, funny, offbeat, and brimming with love for Berlin. And we've made sure to pack it with travel tips that would even impress seasoned Berliners.
I can't wait to reveal those exclusive tidbits. But first, let's take a stroll through history, gaze at monumental architecture, and bask in the cultural richness of Berlin's iconic sights.
Get ready to be enthralled and maybe even a little surprised, because in the next segment, we'll reveal why these aren't just tourist spots. They're the heartbeat of a city that never stops reinventing itself.
So tighten those virtual shoelaces, listeners. Our Berlin journey is just beginning, and what a journey it'll be.
Join us as we step into the world of Brandenburg Gate, the stories behind the Reichstag, and the intrigue of the Berlin Wall. Next stop, iconic sights.
Here we are in the heart of Berlin, about to talk about some of the most iconic sights this city has to offer. Berlin is just teeming with history at every corner. Isn't it, Lara?
Absolutely, Luca. You can practically feel the centuries of stories whispering through the cobblestones. Let's kick off with the Grand Brandenburg Gate, shall we?
Oh, the Brandenburg Gate. It's not just an arch, it's a symbol of unity and peace. Remember the first time you saw it?
I was absolutely spellbound. Walking through those massive columns, I couldn't help but think of all the parades and protests that passed underneath its shadows.
It's funny you mentioned shadows because there's this quirky legend that the gate's design is a bit of a mistake. Supposedly, the chariot at the top was meant to face the other way.
That's classic Berlin for you. Even their iconic landmarks have an oddball history.
Do you want to share about the time you tried to mimic the chariot pose and nearly fell over?
I thought we agreed never to speak of that again.
Okay. Moving swiftly on to another monument that's seen its fair share of history, the magnificent Reichstag building.
Isn't it something? That glass dome is like peering into modern democracy itself. It offers a 360-degree view of the city.
And of the politicians at work, if you're lucky. I sometimes like to think of them as ants in an ant farm, scurrying about beneath us.
And when the sun hits just right, it's like you're on top of a crystal world. The blend of old architecture and modern flair is just poetic.
For sure. Now, you can't talk about Berlin's iconic sites without mentioning the Berlin Wall, or what's left of it.
A sobering but necessary visit. The East Side Gallery, with all its murals, is like walking through an open-air art history book.
True. That mural of the Trabant car breaking through the wall always gets me. Such a powerful image.
Haha. Remember when we tried to recreate it using your tiny rental car? We definitely don't have the same street cred.
My poor tiny car. But it's not just about the murals. There's this palpable feeling of times past, of two worlds colliding and eventually coming together.
Yes, it's fascinating how something that once divided can become a place that unites people from all around the world.
Speaking of unity, remember the time we joined that spontaneous dance party under the Oberbaum Bridge?
How could I forget? Your robot dance is etched into my memory forever, sadly.
Hey, my robot dance is a thing of beauty. But speaking of beauty, we couldn't possibly skip Alexanderplatz, could we?
Definitely not. With the world clock and the TV tower, it's like a crossroads of time and space.
Standing there, you feel at the center of a bustling crossroads, with every direction leading to a new adventure.
I like to time my visits with the hour, just to see the clock work its magic. It's almost hypnotic.
It's like a live geographical quiz, trying to spot the cities as they pass by.
And then there's the TV tower, piercing the sky at over 365 meters tall. Did you know you can dine with panoramic views of the city there?
I did. In fact, they say on a clear day, you can see all the way to the fairy tale landscapes of Brandenburg.
It sounds like the perfect place to gaze upon the city after a day of sightseeing.
Definitely. But let's not forget another classic, Checkpoint Charlie. Now there's a place that feels like a scene straight out of a spy novel.
Oh, absolutely. It's so dramatic, imagining all those covert exchanges and tense moments of history.
And the nearby museum is like a treasure trove, a collection of Cold War artifacts and tales of daring escapes.
And now, Checkpoint Charlie is your one-stop shop for an Americano and a tacky souvenir.
It is a bit touristy now, but it's a landmark you just can't skip, even if it's just to mock my attempts at espionage drama.
You trying to look inconspicuous is like a giraffe in a library.
Hey, I think I'd make a dashing spy.
In a sitcom, maybe.
Anyway, let's wrap up our iconic sights segment. Up next, we'll dive into the delicious cuisine of Berlin, making me hungry already. What's the one Berlin dish you can't live without, Lara?
You'll just have to wait to find out, Luca. And listeners, trust us. The flavors of this city are as rich as its history.
Welcome back to the savory part of Travel with Lara and Luca. It's all about Berlin's delicious cuisine.
Oh, the flavors of Berlin. This city will surprise you. It's not just schnitzels and pretzels, folks.
Definitely not. Let's start with the classic, the currywurst. This is street food royalty right here in Berlin.
It's a deceptively simple dish, just sliced sausage drenched in curry ketchup. But there's something about it, right?
It's that zingy sauce. They've got that secret spice mix that's hard to put your finger on. It's like 1 minute you're tasting tomato, and the next, it's an explosion of curry.
You'll get these everywhere, from fancy sit-down restaurants to little food stands by the U-Bahn, each claiming to have the best currywurst in town.
Ah, the battle of the currywurst. But imagine being in Berlin and not trying a doner kebab.
Turkish influence is massive here. It's said Berlin is the birthplace of the doner as we know it.
You've got those huge columns of meat rotating on the spit, right? And those wafts of spice that hit you as you walk past.
Yes, and then the crunchy salad, the creamy sauces, and the fluffy bread. It's a love letter wrapped in a pita, Luca.
A love letter I'd happily receive any day. But speaking of bread, Berlin's bakeries, the morning scent of fresh Brötchen is unbeatable.
To pair with a strong German coffee. And if you're feeling adventurous, go for a Schrippen. That's a special kind of bread roll, light and airy on the inside, but with a nice crunchy crust.
Don't forget the sweet tooth, the Berliner Pfannkuchen. It's a jam-filled donut, but they call it just Berliner everywhere else in Germany.
And here's a trivia bite for you. Don't call them Berliners in Berlin. It'll be a dead giveaway you're a tourist.
Ha! Here, they're just Pfannkuchen. And bit of history, these were supposedly made as a symbol of the new year, with hidden mustard in one as a prank.
You can't talk about Berlin's cuisine without invoking the spirit of the Kaffeeklatsch.
Lara, Kaffeeklatsch, and Kuchen, coffee and cake. It's an institution, taking the time to sit and chat or read a newspaper. It's poetry in the form of pastry and conversation.
I'll raise my cup to that. Let's not wander off from cake. Ever had a Baumkuchen? The tree cake.
Those layers, each one representing a year in a tree's life, and art in the making as it's slowly cooked while turning on a spit.
What about the modern side of Berlin's food scene, the brunch places, and the new wave of vegan eateries?
Absolutely, Berlin is a champion of plant-based diets. You can find incredible vegan versions of classic dishes.
And street food markets. Have you been to Markthalle 9? Their Street Food Thursday is this vibrant whirlwind of flavors from all around the globe.
That's Berlin in a nutshell, isn't it? A cross-cultural foodie fiesta. With food stalls, you can globe-trot from Vietnamese spring rolls to Argentine empanadas.
Remember the time we stumbled upon that little Spanish tapas place? One minute we're in Berlin, the next it's like Barcelona.
Traveling through time and space with every mouthful. And you cannot leave this city without enjoying a Späti picnic.
Spätis are these little convenience stores, but there's so much more. Open late, they're neighborhood's little lifelines.
You grab your supplies, some local beer, cheese, fresh fruits, maybe a pretzel or two, then find a spot in the park for an impromptu picnic.
It's a Berlin thing through and through, a casual dining experience where the city itself is your dining room.
And not to end on a saucy note, but the street food scene wouldn't be complete without mentioning the condiments. Berliners and their mustards and mayos.
Oh, it's serious business, Luca. I've seen friendships tested over mustard preferences.
Friendship is one thing, but a proper Berlin meal is another. If you're not putting mustard on it, are you even eating?
Words to dine by, my friend. Berlin's rich tapestry of flavors could make anyone fall in love with it over and over again.
From traditional treats to modern plates, there's a story in every bite in this city.
And each story is as delicious as the last. Now, folks, get ready for the next palate cleanser.
Our next segment unravels the most amazing hidden gems in Berlin. You think you know this city?
Keep listening, and we'll guide you to the secrets that even some locals haven't uncovered.
Because in Berlin, the more you look, the more you find. Stay tuned.
For all of you intrepid explorers out there, welcome back to Travel with Lara and Luca, where we're diving into the heart of Berlin's hidden gems.
That's right, Lara. Berlin is like a treasure chest. It's loaded with surprises tucked away in its fold. You think you know a city, and then bam, it reveals another secret.
Oh, absolutely. And the first hidden gem we're going to chat about isn't something you'd find on your everyday tour brochure. It's the magical garden colony of Schrebergarten.
Aha! These petite plots of green are the epitome of hidden. Nestled between apartment blocks and busy streets, they are Berliners' escape into nature.
And you won't just find flowers and veggies growing there. There's a whole community spirit brewing, like each garden tells a story about its owner.
Speaking of stories, want to hear about the time I got invited for a barbecue at one and ended up in a gnome costume competition?
Oh, please, do tell. It seems that gnomes are a serious business in Schrebergarten.
You bet. I strutted my stuff down the garden path, sporting a pointy hat. I didn't win, but the Bratwurst consolation prize made up for it.
Sheer poetry in motion, I'm sure. Now, moving from garden gnomes to something more underground, let's chat about Berlin's hidden speakeasies.
Yes, the speakeasy scene here is like stepping into a time machine. Look for the barest hint of a doorway in the most unexpected places. Utter a password, and voila!
There's one behind a nondescript door in Mitte, isn't there? You'd stroll right past it if you didn't know what to look for.
Exactly, and when you get in, it's all 1920s glam inside. They serve cocktails with that authentic Prohibition-era pizzazz.
Nothing like a twist of history with your tipple to make you feel like a time-traveling bon vivant.
And on the topic of time traveling, let's not forget the vintage cinemas. The old-school charm of watching a movie in one of those is a gem in itself.
Oh, you're talking about the silent movie theater in Friedrichshain, right? I love that place. The organist playing along gives me the good kind of shivers.
It's magical, isn't it? Silent films were the meme culture of their day when you think about it. Visual storytelling at its most expressive.
I think you might be onto something there with the meme theory. Now, for music lovers, there's a fantastic hidden gem.
Are you hinting at the clandestine piano bars? Because if you are, let me just say, it's one of my favorite things in Berlin.
Yes, where else can you stumble upon an impromptu jazz session or classical recital in a back alley wine cellar?
I'll never forget that night we found one, and you convinced me to sing a duet with that virtuoso pianist.
You can't deny it was a hit, Luca. We had the crowd cheering. All right, maybe more laughing than cheering, but still.
Humbling experiences, Lara, make for the best memories. Speaking of memories, nothing beats the quirky flea markets hiding around the city.
They're more than just markets, aren't they? Each stall brims with nostalgia. It's like Berliners are selling and buying pieces of the city's soul.
And you never know what you'll find. Vintage garments, records, even artifacts from Berlin's many eras. It's a hipster's heaven.
Absolutely. Remember that 70s lava lamp you found? You wouldn't shut up about it for days. It was like witnessing a reunion between old friends.
That lamp was, and is, a beacon of retro style, Lara. But moving from the tangible to the intangible, there's one hidden gem that's more about the feels.
Oh, you're being mysterious now. Do share.
I'm talking about those peaceful spots by the Spree, where locals go to sit and watch the sunset.
Yes, those quiet riverside nooks are pure gold, a lovely reprieve from the city's buzz.
Catching a sunset there is like sharing a secret moment with Berlin itself. The sky turns into a canvas, and the city softens around the edges.
No wonder Berliners are so poetic about their river. It's like a silent narrator to the city's story.
And that brings us to the close of this hidden treasure trove of a segment.
And Luca, I think our listeners will be eagerly anticipating something a little more bizarre.
Next up, we'll uncover the weird, the wacky, and the downright whimsical facts about Berlin.
I'm all in for that. Quirkiness is part of the city's charm. It'll be a segment to remember.
Until then, we'll keep the secrets safe and the stories untold for just a while longer. So Lara, we find ourselves in segment 4, where we divulge the must-see places in Berlin that you simply can't miss.
Absolutely, Luca. And I believe any trip to Berlin begins with the crown jewel, the Museum Island, and the Pergamon Museum.
Oh, the Pergamon, home to monumental treasures like the Ishtar Gate of Babylon. Every time I step into that museum, I feel like I've time-traveled to the ancient world.
The detail on those blue glazed bricks makes you feel rather insignificant, doesn't it?
True. Fun fact, those bricks were actually colored with lapis lazuli, a gemstone that symbolized royalty.
Walking through it, you almost hear the hustle and bustle of ancient markets.
I rather enjoy the peace away from the busy Berlin streets. But let's not forget about the rest of the Museum Island, what with the Old National Gallery and the Bode Museum.
I can spend a whole day just lounging on the steps by the river, watching the boats go by between museum hops.
Museum fatigue is real though, Lara, but it's the best kind of tiredness.
Every time we go, Luca, you're like a child in a candy store. Your eyes just light up at the sight of the Nefertiti bust.
Guilty as charged. But hey, what's not to love? The artistry is incredible. And speaking of incredible, how do you feel about the Berlin Cathedral?
Oh, the Berliner Dom is it's exquisite. The sheer size of its dome always has me in awe.
And that's saying something, considering your lack of adoration for heights, Lara.
Hey, for that view, I'll brave any lofty spire. The panorama of Berlin from up there is something else.
While you're soaking in the view, I'm always struck by the organ. The sound that echoes through the nave is spine-tingling.
I remember when we attended that organ concert. You practically floated out of the cathedral. You were so moved.
It's a transformative experience, Lara. Music does that to you, especially in such a sacred space.
Speaking of sacred spaces, our next must-see place takes the conversation to a more somber note. The Holocaust Memorial.
Oh, yes, the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe. It's nearly impossible to describe the weight you feel walking among those stelae.
It's designed to disorient, isn't it? As you walk deeper, the ground slopes and the columns rise over your head.
It feels chaotic, yet ordered. So isolating, yet you're right in the middle of the city.
Being there, it's a solemn reminder of the atrocities we must never forget. But in that memory is also a commitment to a hopeful, tolerant future.
And the Underground Museum adds layers to the narrative. Personal stories, artifacts. Every visit brings a new painful story to light.
It's incredible, Luca, how Berlin embraces its history, no matter how dark, and yet still beams with hope and progress.
That's the spirit of Berlin for you, Lara. It's a phoenix that has risen from its ashes, time and again.
And it's in that spirit we should tease our next adventurous segment.
You're right, Lara. So, dear listeners, if you think these must-see places have been interesting, just wait until we take you on a journey through some of Berlin's weirdest facts.
Ah, the stories we have for you. You'll learn why Berlin might just be the quirkiest city you'll ever visit. But that's a tale for segment 5. Welcome back to another whimsical wander through Berlin's oddities. This is the segment where we dish out some of the weirdest facts about this city.
Ah, weird facts. My favorite Berlin trivia is about the Ampelmännchen. You know, those cute little traffic light men.
I love them. They actually sparked quite the controversy after German reunification. There was a big debate about whether to keep the East Berlin Ampelmännchen or replace them with the standardized Western ones.
It's a traffic light revolution. East Berlin's Ampelmännchen won in the end. They're now celebrated as a beloved symbol of the city's quirky charm.
And speaking of winning, did you know that there's an annual vegetable battle on the Oberbaum Bridge here in Berlin?
Oh, this is gold. A full-on food fight, right? Teams from Friedrichshain and Kreuzberg, if I remember correctly, lobbing veggies at each other across the Spree River.
Exactly. And while we're not endorsing food fights per se, it captures that offbeat spirit we love.
Berlin's creative streak doesn't end there. Some buildings are outright wacky, like the Bierpinsel, which looks like a treehouse from a sci-fi set.
Oh, a piece of trivia on that. The Bierpinsel's peculiar design was actually a result of architectural competition. Go figure.
Now, how about a law that'll make you grin? It's illegal to keep your chickens on a balcony in Berlin.
I can't help but picture a flock of urbanite hens pecking around next to someone's morning coffee.
Poor balcony-bound chickens aside, Berlin also has a museum for sausages. I kid you not, a whole museum dedicated to the Wurst.
Only in Berlin could such a museum exist. But let's take a moment for perhaps the weirdest fact of all, Berlin's zoning law of house numbers.
Ah, yes. House numbers in Berlin follow a horseshoe system. They start on one side of the street, go all the way down, and then come back up the other side.
That definitely caught me out a few times. It's not exactly what you'd call intuitive.
But it makes life for posties a lot easier. One long trek instead of back and forthing across the street.
True. And then there's the monster of all weird facts, the Berliner Luft, the particular air of Berlin.
Some say this air has a special quality, a mix of freedom, creativity, and let's be honest, a tiny bit of anarchy.
It's the type of air that inspired countless artists, from David Bowie to Marlene Dietrich.
And here's to hoping it inspires our travelers as well. So, as we leave the curious and peculiar tidbits of Berlin behind,
we prepare to plunge into the historical heart of the city. Next up, we're delving deep into Berlin's rich history, from a tiny trading post to a world capital.
Get ready for stories that shaped the world we know today. All coming up after our short break. So we've danced around the iconic sights, sampled some of Berlin's finest eats, and gotten lost in the city's secret alleyways. Now, let's dive deep into the soul of Berlin, its history.
Absolutely, Luca. Berlin's history is like this intricate tapestry where every thread tells a different story of struggle, innovation, and transformation. From the days of the Prussian kings right through to the digital age, this city has seen it all.
It started back in the 13th century, didn't it? Talk about historical pedigree. I mean, Berlin's been at the center of major historical milestones since its founding.
Definitely. It was just a small trading post back then, but it quickly rose to become the capital of Prussia. And those elegant avenues and stately buildings in Mitte? They're shouting the might of the Prussian Empire, don't you think?
Oh, they're shouting, all right. And then Berlin found itself morphing into the capital of an empire, the German Empire, in 1871. How's that for an upgrade?
Talk about a glow-up. But of course, the world wars took their toll on this city. World War I saw the end of the monarchy and ushered in the Weimar Republic. A time of great creativity, by the way, with artists and philosophers flocking to Berlin.
That was before the city faced the turmoil of World War II and the subsequent Cold War. The images of Berlin after the war, rubble everywhere, the Brandenburg Gate battered and broken, are just haunting.
They really are. But then something remarkable happened in the heart of this war-ravaged city. The Berlin Wall went up in 1961, and gosh, it didn't just divide the city, it split the world in two, east and west, locked in a frosty standoff.
That's a sight I wish I'd never seen. A concrete barrier snaking through the city, slicing through streets, and even families. The graffiti on the west side became a colorful canvas of defiance, each spray paint can a weapon in an ideological battle.
But oh, the joy and tears when that wall finally fell in 1989. I mean, imagine living in a divided city for 28 years and then freedom. Pieces of the wall sold as souvenirs. It was surreal.
It was a rebirth, Lara. Berlin had to find its identity all over again. And you know, despite the bulbous Fernsehturm and the sleek lines of Potsdamer Platz, it's a city that doesn't hide its scars.
No, and that's the beauty of it. The reconstruction is a growing testament and memory rolled into one. The memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe, it's stark, it's simple, and it's incredibly powerful.
Exactly. You walk through those stone columns, and they just tower over you, and there's this feeling of loss and contemplation that almost knocks the wind out of you.
And then there's the Stolperstein, those stumbling stones embedded in the sidewalks. Each one bears the name of a Holocaust victim, right outside their last known residence. You're literally tripping over history.
It's the smallest details, like those stones, that bring history straight to your heart. Now, with Berlin being this hub for startups and creative industries, it gives you a sense of the city's incredible resilience, don't you think?
For sure. From operas to open source software, Berlin's reinventing itself yet again. It's become this sanctuary for artists and tech visionaries, and there's a palpable sense of hope and ambition in the air.
It's caught between nostalgia and novelty, and it just works. So if you're walking down the streets of Berlin, remember, every cobblestone, every facade, and every corner cafe has a story to tell.
And the most beautiful thing is that the history keeps on being written, you know? We stand on the shoulders of the past, reaching for the stars of the future.
Nicely said, Lara. Berlin is anything but static. And speaking of reaching for the stars, wait until we share some expert travel tips to make your Berlin adventure truly out of this world.
That's right. Because in our next segment, we'll let you in on how to navigate this city like a local, find the best deals, and have an authentic Berlin experience without breaking the bank. And with Berlin's history still echoing in our minds, let's pivot to something sure to make your travels smoother. Welcome to our expert travel tips segment.
Oh yes, the nitty-gritty, Lara. I think our listeners are really going to appreciate this treasure trove of advice we've got lined up.
Absolutely, Luca. Traveling can be overwhelming, but fear not, we've navigated the bustling streets of Berlin, and we have insights you won't find in your average guidebook.
So true. Let's kick off with transportation. Berlin's public transit system is a thing of beauty. Buses, trams, U-Bahn, S-Bahn, you name it. Buying a day ticket or a welcome card can save you both time and money.
Spot on. And for convenience, there's an app for everything, Luca. BVG Far Info app lets you plan your routes with real-time updates, and you can even buy tickets straight from your phone.
Nothing quite like embracing technology to make life easier, eh? Remember that time I tried to get us to Alexanderplatz, but ended up at some far-flung station because I misread the map?
I do. It ended up being a happy accident, though, didn't it? We discovered that quaint little cafe with the most mouth-watering Apfelstrudel.
Ah, the serendipity of travel blunders. But hey, let's talk accommodation. Staying in central areas like Mitte can be pricier, but if you're after a buzzing atmosphere and walkable sights, it's worth considering.
Budget travelers might prefer neighborhoods like Kreuzberg or Friedrichshain. Lots of vibe, artistic flair, and better yet, more affordable. And don't shy away from hostels, folks. They can be hubs of cultural exchange.
Speaking of cultural exchange, let's address the classic traveler's conundrum: when to visit. Summer, with its open-air karaoke at Mauer Park and outdoor beer gardens, offers a certain joie de vivre.
True, but I have a soft spot for fall. The city's parks turn a stunning palette of colors. Plus, it's not as crowded as summer, and the cultural calendar is booming with film festivals and art events.
Can't argue with that. And did we mention Christmas markets? Berlin in winter is like a fairy tale. Just dress warmly and enjoy the Glühwein to stay cozy.
Now, here's something a seasoned traveler like you, Luca, knows all about: saving money.
Ah, yes. Embracing the free things first, like the Reichstag Dome, although you do need to register in advance. And don't miss out on all the beautiful parks.
Exactly. Tiergarten is perfect for a leisurely stroll, and it doesn't cost a penny. Plus, visit Museum Island on Thursdays close to closing time. Some museums offer free entry.
There's also the Berlin Welcome Card, which besides transport includes discounts on many attractions and tours. A penny saved is a penny for more schnitzel.
Or currywurst. But really, Luca, eating out can be one of the biggest expenses. Any tips for dining on a dime?
Oh, countless. Look out for lunch specials called Mittagstisch. You can dine at nicer places for a fraction of the dinner price.
And become best friends with the local imbiss or snack bars. Tasty, cheap eats and a true Berlin experience. Doner kebab, anyone?
You read my mind. But let's not forget about markets. The Turkish market on Maybatschufer offers fresh produce and delicious snacks. You'll eat like a king, spend like a pauper.
Ooh. Feel like we might need to take a food break soon, but let's push on. Remember, folks, Berlin's tech savvy, so watch for apps that offer last-minute deals on everything from dining to entertainment.
Brilliant advice. And we simply must talk about tours. Free walking tours are great for orientation, and you pay what you feel it's worth at the end.
That's perfect for any budget. Just remember to tip your guide if you enjoy the tour. It's a tough gig in the bustling Berlin streets.
Before we get lost in the streets, let's remind our listeners about those all-important cultural nuances, Lara.
Oh yes, saying hello and goodbye when entering and leaving shops, and being punctual are just a couple of the local customs.
And when it comes to dining etiquette, it's typical to stay seated until the host or oldest person sits. Plus, keep your hands on the table, not in your lap.
Little things that go a long way. And with a few of these tips tucked safely in your travel holster,
you're set for a Berlin adventure with a smooth edge. But our expertise doesn't end at city limits, does it, Lara?
Not at all, Luca. In fact, our next segment is all about stretching your legs beyond Berlin for some enchanting side excursions.
Ah, the promise of scenic routes and hidden historical havens. I can hardly wait.
Neither can I. So, dear wanderers, stick with us as we uncover the routes less traveled and the day trips that will turn a great vacation into an unforgettable one.
All right, we have ventured through the streets, stories, and surprises of Berlin's heart. And now,
it's time to step just a touch outside that beating heart to the extraordinary places within day-tripping distance. Welcome to Side Excursions, folks.
First on the road less traveled, or should I say, the road well worth traveling, Potsdam. It's like Berlin's historical countryside cousin, you know?
Absolutely, it's this gem where you can find Sanssouci Palace. It's like indulging in a slice of Versailles pie, just, in Germany.
And let's not forget the gardens. They're a dream, stretching out like a quilt made of greenery and flowers.
Now, have you stumbled upon the Dutch Quarter there? Those red brick buildings had me wondering if I'd teleported to the Netherlands for a second.
I did. I expected to see tulips and windmills at every corner. Luckily, German beer was still on the menu, very grounding indeed.
Speaking of menus, one can't visit Potsdam without diving into the historic cuisine. Have you tried the local eel, Luca?
I've always been more of a pretzel guy, but hey, for Potsdam, I'd try anything. Adventure is the spice of travel, as they say.
Now let's not confine ourselves to Potsdam, enchanting as it is. There is also the Spreewald, just a canoe paddle away from Berlin.
Spreewald, the enchanted forest of sprees, or well, that's what it feels like. The waterways there are like nature's winding streets.
It's all about the pickles there, right? You haven't lived until you've had a Spreewald pickle, or so I've been told by, every market vendor there.
And the tales they spin. One guy swore his pickles were a secret weapon of charm and wit. Maybe that's how we got so delightful, Lara.
It would explain a lot, wouldn't it? But for those seeking the serenade of swaying trees, Grunewald Forest is a must.
Ah yes, Berlin's own wilderness reserve. A green wonderland with trees older than some countries, I'm sure.
And those trees are willing listeners to your tales. Maybe because they're too polite to walk away when we start our rambling.
That's it. Trees are too rooted to run from our podcast. Speaking of, let us ramble towards the Baltic Sea coast. The beaches there are quite the reprieve.
Sea breeze and history with those grand old resort towns. Binz on Rügen Island isn't far, and it's like stepping into another century.
I'm still amazed by the chalk cliffs there. They make you feel like you're in a giant's art studio.
Looking at the world through the gaze of architecture and art, that's what travel does to you, transforms your perspective.
And if you travel right, transformation becomes a superpower. But let's touch upon a personal favorite side excursion, the Teufelsberg.
The Devil's Mountain, shrouded in mystery and graffiti. You just can't miss that sense of stepping into recent history, an eerie spy novel setting.
Ascending that hill feels like a pilgrimage to modern mythology, with the abandoned NSA listening station at the top.
It's a church for whispers of the past, the graffiti a new creed written over old secrets. Then there's that view, right?
Exactly, a view that captivates the soul. The city may be quiet off in the distance, but up there, it's loud with history and legends.
Peaks like that, they let you reach out and touch the sky. Reminds you of why we set out exploring in the first place.
Speaking of touching the sky, how about we bring our listeners to our next high-flying chat in the conclusion and final thoughts segment?
Perfect. We'll wrap up a bow on our Berlin banter and tell you all about how this eclectic city has indeed touched our skies and possibly our hearts.
Stay tuned as we recap on the Berlin expedition and share probably too many personal anecdotes. It's our specialty, after all.
That and turning every goodbye into just a see you later. Because with us, there's always another adventure on the horizon.
So, hang on to your hats, scarves, or any loose-fitting articles of joy. We'll be soaring into our heartfelt farewells in just a bit.
Berlin, you've been an absolute delight. A tapestry of history, art, and savory bites that etch themselves into memory. It's time to draw our Berlin expedition to a close on Travel with Lara and Luca. Luca, where has the time gone?
It's danced away on the vibrant streets of Berlin. From the iconic sights to the hidden gems, we've traversed through layers of Berlin's charismatic charm. Do you have a favorite moment from today's episode?
Oh, definitely the part when we spoke about our visit to the Holocaust Memorial. Such a moving experience. Always leaves an indelible mark. And you, Luca?
For me, it was digging into those delicious Berlin street foods and sharing my, shall we say, overly enthusiastic mustard mishap. Hungry and happy. That's my motto.
Truly reflects the Berlin vibe. That does. Listeners, we hope you've enjoyed our company as we've chatted our way through the wonders of Berlin. Luca, I think we've gathered some pretty sturdy travel insights today, haven't we?
Absolutely. If you take one thing away from this episode, let it be the understanding that Berlin is not just a place you see, it's a city you feel. Feel its history, its energy, and its willingness to keep evolving.
Berlin is indeed a city that never stands still, and neither do we, right, Luca?
You got that right, Lara. Travelers, remember our tips. Wander with curiosity, taste with delight, and respect the stories etched in every corner. Make your journey your own, and Berlin will unfold in unexpected ways.
We hope to have sparked a flame of wanderlust in you to pack that bag and book that ticket. Obviously, when it's safe and possible. Exploration awaits.
And as we wrap up, a huge danke to you listeners for being our travel companions on Travel with Lara and Luca. Your ears and imaginations make our trips all the more wonderful.
Yes, thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and we hope you'll carry a piece of Berlin with you through our stories. Stay tuned for our next adventure. It's going to be another chapter of discovery and delightful banter. That much I can promise.
Until then, keep your passports handy and your spirit of adventure alive. Maybe give that Berlin-style doner kebab recipe a go, eh?
Or get lost in some Berlin-inspired art. Bring a stroke of the city into your home. Oh, and listeners, don't forget to keep your travel dreams vibrant, much like the streets of Berlin.
Lara, before we truly say goodbye, how about we each share a single line that to us captures the essence of Berlin?
I'd love that. Berlin, you're a living canvas, painted with the past and boldly coloring in the future. How's that?
Beautifully said. Here's mine. Berlin, where every stone tells a story, and every step forward is a dance with history.
Just perfect, Luca. Remember, travelers, to keep embracing the discoveries and appreciating the journeys, no matter how big or small. We'll meet again for more escapades on Travel with Lara and Luca.
Until our next journey, auf Wiedersehen, and keep the spirit of Berlin with you always.